Hi friends. So I just wanted to make a quick video because I got a couple of things on my mind, but pardon me. These are topics I want to explore a little further later on, but they're pressing on my mind right now, so I just wanted to touch on them at the moment. So one thing is this morning I woke up and listened to a video by Aron Goch. He is a young man in South Africa who makes videos similar to mine, just talking into the camera about like basically philosophizing on life. I'll talk about him every now and then because I really like his videos. Although he isn't aware of a lot of truths. We have different views on things, which is fine, but I still appreciate his overall perspective and some of his insights into the reality of this place. This morning he posted a video about how this woman left a comment on his video saying that she thought he was very pessimistic and paranoid about the state of things in South Africa, and he replied that that was a very that the comment is kind of gaslighting and bullying because it denies his perspective on his situation, and that in actual fact South Africa is the fourth most violent and has the highest is the fourth ranked country in the world with the highest criminal activity. So he's not just making it up in his head. And so the two topics that I wanted to discuss are both related in respect to this, because there's this idea that whatever you think manifests, and this is not the case. What law of attraction is that you attract what you are. So what your dominant belief system, perspective, thoughts, behaviors, that makes up who you are. But also there's this added element of your frequency, your basic constitution in terms of your astrology, whether you believe in it or not, it's accurate. So these things all contribute to who you are and your frequency. So your dominant frequency is what you attract. Now, you can focus all you want on attracting money or a handsome man or a beautiful woman into your experience, but if you do not resonate with it wholly and completely, you will not attract it into your experience. This also requires action on your part, inspired action. So if you think that you want to attract money into your life and you don't take any action, like for example Abraham Hicks has said, you can focus and visualize all you want on winning the lottery, but you have to buy a damn lottery ticket. You're not going to win if you don't play. And so you have to be in tune with the frequency, yes, but your whole body, your whole frequency has to be in tune with the frequency of the things that you want to attract in your life. So if, for example, you keep thinking positive thoughts, and you deny your reality, you are not going to attract positive things because you're completely denying your reality. Your reality is that you are in financial distress and you're trying to attract lots of money. You're ignoring the fact that you're in financial distress. You have to first accept that you are in financial distress. You have to accept the way things are before you can move towards what you desire. And really, you shouldn't be desiring anything anyway. Desire is a trap, want is a trap, because both of those things imply lack. So you need to be accepting of what is. I mean, that is what Aron is talking about to some extent, he's touched on other issues. Basically, his issue was that she was denying his reality, and he is accepting his reality. She is denying his reality. She is denying the reality at all. And this is when you get into a state of delusion. So this is where you get in. What I wanted to talk about is the concept of duality and delusion. There's duality, there's dualism, and there's delusion. And this concept that whatever you think manifests is false. And it's this concept that you can totally deny and ignore what is and manifest something that you think and that you believe, and if you believe it hard enough, it will manifest, is false. So we have to get away from this delusional thinking. There is no way that this is true and accurate for this reality, for this realm. So this woman that was commenting on Aron's video was basically denying the reality that there is violence and that there is things to be afraid of. She hasn't accepted that there is violence and things to be afraid of in that area, and she lives in South Africa as well. So yes, there are beautiful things to see. There are beautiful aspects of South Africa to see, and he isn't denying that. He isn't saying that there isn't anything beautiful to see in South Africa. He's saying that in his experience, he's having these ups and downs, and he's being realistic about it. And by not confronting it and not facing it, he's not going to be able to deal with it. Whereas she's completely denying it and not dealing with it and ignoring it, the things that you leave ignored will come and slap you in the face if you don't deal with them. So I talked about that some time ago, that the things that you ignore need your attention. So you can't just ignore that you're stuck in the mud. You can't just ignore that you have no money. You can't just ignore and live in a state of denial that this is not happening. So for example, there was a friend of mine who told me that her friend is all about law of attraction, but again, these people misinterpret law of attraction because they don't hear the message accurately. They hear what they want to hear because they're afraid to face the truth. They're afraid to accept what is. And we all do it, all of us, with some aspect of our existence, our reality, our life, whatever, because there are certain things that we just don't want to deal with, don't want to face. And so I'm not saying that this is a horrible thing to do, but this is the way things work. So this woman is all about law of attraction. She likes to tell people, she's a law of attraction coach, in fact. And so she was telling her friend, though, how she has financial problems, and then she won't talk about it for very long for fear of attracting more financial problems. But then instead what she does is she spends more money to appear like she has a lot of money. So she buys expensive things, and she buys things she can't afford, and she won't look at her bank balance, she won't look at what she actually has, and she won't deal with the reality that she's overspending, she's spending over her means, because to her, what she has to do is focus on what she wants, and what she wants is all these fancy things. But she's not allowing the process of a law of attraction to take course because she's denying the reality that she's broke. And so her core, at her core, there's something that is off balance. There's something she's not facing. She's not accepting that she's broke. And this is going to happen. Eventually it's going to smack her in the face. She's going to go bankrupt. She's going to lose everything. And it's going to be bad because she hasn't confronted it. She hasn't faced it. She's just totally ignored it. And this is what happens because she knows that it's there. She kind of slightly acknowledges that it's there, but because she won't deal with it, It's going to manifest. It's going to fester. It's going to grow like a cancer, and then it's going to eat her alive. So she's going to have to deal with it. So that's one aspect of this law of attraction issue, that people don't look at it and don't listen to what the actual teachers tell them, and some of them teach you wrong. To me, Abraham Hicks teaches accurately. Some people don't like her. I don't think she focuses on the materialism stuff. She focuses on the opposite. She tells you that it's the feeling you're after, and that's what you should be focusing on. So really, this woman who has financial problems, the feeling she's after is a feeling of abundance. But deep down, the reason she wants this feeling of abundance is because deep down she feels tremendous lack. Something happened in her childhood that she's not dealing with that makes her feel worthless. And therefore, she spends to cover up the worthlessness. She's not acknowledging that this issue stems from that feeling of worthlessness. And once she does, then she heals that. So it's very simple, really, because she wants to feel valued. She wants to feel wealthy. She wants to feel loved, and she's not getting it. And this is how she tries to get it. And I don't even know this person. This is really all I can see from her behavior and her outward projection of the things that she wants in life and the things that she's denying and hiding, and it's not that complicated. So I'm trying not to sneeze. Okay, so the other thing that I wanted to talk about was, because Aron was touching on as well, he was touching on this comment telling him that his perspective and his experience is paranoid and pessimistic, and basically that it's all in his mind. Well, it's not completely untrue that it is in his mind, because it is in your mind. You can choose to have a different experience, but that doesn't mean that his experience is not valid. It's an experience that he must have, that he must go through. Whether you perceive it as positive or negative is a reflection on you, not a reflection on him. And so you can't save him from his experience. Sorry, the screen went dark. No one can save him from his experience. He has to go through whatever experience is required for his spirit or his soul to grow, his soul to expand. His journey here requires certain experiences that his vibration calls to him. And so to you it may be perceived as a negative experience, but for him, he may need that negative experience in order to grow, and that is a positive experience. And so this is why a lot of people will say, well, I don't believe in law of attraction. Doesn't matter whether you believe in it or not, it exists. So I don't believe in law of attraction because I would never want this bad experience to have happened to me. I don't see how I called this bad experience into my life. And yes, there are things that happen to you that you do bump into other people, because it is a co-creative experience that happen near you, around you, and seem to be happening to you, but don't actually happen to you. They just happen near you or around you, and you choose to participate in them or not. And there are things that happen to you directly, like getting mugged or something, that you may have called into your experience, may not have called into your experience, but something made you walk down that corridor or that alleyway that at that time that had happened to coincide with that mugger being in the alleyway. And people have a hard time accepting this, and it is a hard thing to accept, and it is a hard thing to explain. However, things that seem to be of a negative experience are not always a negative experience. Things that happen to you that are negative, like with the woman who is denying her reality of being broke, eventually it's going to shatter her financial situation's just going to fall apart because she hasn't dealt with it. It's already crumbling. It's already falling apart. But if she dealt with it now, it would be less painful than it is going to be when she does not deal with it, because eventually it's going to explode. She might lose her husband. She might lose her house. She might lose all her money. She might lose her job. She might lose her health. It can get really bad because she refuses to look at the thing that's causing all of this. And so if you aren't looking at the things that cause these things, aren't looking at the core root of the problem, aren't dealing with these little things as they rear up, aren't analyzing the things that happen to you and trying to understand why they happen to you, they're going to keep happening to you until it gets worse and worse and worse, until you really realize what the hell is going on here, because that is what this experience does. And so your seemingly negative experiences are actually warning signs telling you that there's something you have to deal with. So you can perceive it as a negative and continue to dwell in the negative and continue to say, wow, this horrible thing that happened to me, and not get past it and not see it as any other thing other than this horrible thing that happened to you, which a lot of people do. But the place you want to get to, if you're going to do the work, the inner work, and this is part of what we have to do here, and if you're watching my videos, then that's why you're watching them, because you want to do the inner work, you want to free yourself. So if you're not confronting your fears, at the smaller stage, it's going to rear its ugly head and it's going to smack you in the face eventually. But I lost my train of thought. I forgot where I was going with that. But you can perceive it as negative, or you can perceive it as positive. You can turn it into the experience. Once you understand why you're having the experience and what benefit you got out of it, then you turn it into something positive. And that's what alchemy is. That's what turning the negative into the positive means, as far as I understand it. So there's always going to be some suffering or some negative thing that happens, and I was listening to someone who said that the negative thing, that the suffering is, this place is always going to have suffering. That's the nature of this place. And this person said that he was a rabbi. He was talking about Kabbalah, and he was saying that the nature of suffering is not getting what you want, basically. And that can come in a positive form or a negative form. If you expect that you're going to get $50 and you get $100, then that is suffering because you didn't get what you expected. Now, one could argue that, well, that's not really suffering because I have more than I wanted and more than I expected. But you can say, okay, well, maybe $50 more is not suffering, but maybe $1,000 more is suffering, because depending on why you got it, you might have to claim it on your taxes and then pay extra income tax, or you have to hide it, or you feel anxious about it because it's more than you expected and you don't know how to justify it. Like, it causes inner conflict, which is suffering. And so there's a whole variety of ways to look at it, and it's all about how you perceive it that changes whether it's actually a good or a bad thing, or a suffering, or the benefit. Anyway, I'm gonna have to get into that deeper in another video, because it's not really where I want to go right now. But the other aspect that I wanted to touch on that relates to this is about the concept of duality and delusion. Because, so like this woman was saying, she's judging this guy Aron, saying that he's pessimistic, and because she's positive. They both live in the same place, they both have different experiences, and her experience from her perspective is positive, and his experience from his perspective is positive. She's judging his experience as negative because to her it's negative. But he's not judging his experience as negative. He's judging his experience as positive. So who are you to go and tell somebody else that your experience is negative? That is incredibly judgmental and condescending. And your experience is not their experience. Each person must have their own individual experience because that is their path. And we cannot infringe on somebody else's experience. It is not their life is not our life to live for them. You can teach someone something you've learned. If you know of a better path, you can teach someone something that you learned in order to help them. And if they choose to take it, if they're in a place where they can hear you and they want to hear you and they want to learn, then they will take it and apply it, and it might benefit them. But they may not be in a place where your advice benefits them. Either because they don't understand it, they don't hear you, they're not ready for it, they can't apply it. When they apply it, it doesn't work because their life is not your life. We are individuals having an individual experience, part of the whole. We are not the same being. We're part of the same whole. And so you cannot impose your life and your experience onto somebody else and expect them to have the same results. So, having said that, alright, so there's this concept of duality, dualism, and this perception that we can all have our own individual realities and create our own individual realities. False. There is what is in our perception of it, right? Whether you agree with that or not doesn't matter. That's how it is. There is what is in our perception of it. You can see a tree. Okay, I'm going to use this example. There's a table in a room. The table is made of wood and it is painted black. It is in the center of the room and there's nothing else in the room. And there is a door into the room. That's all. All the information you have. Now, I would say that pretty much 20 people could look at this table in a room and all agree on those basic fundamental facts. Wooden table, painted black, center of the room, in a room with a door. Nothing else in the room. Now, each individual person has their individual perspectives, their individual experiences in life. They have their own individual educations, their own individual ways of growing up and vibration, frequency, etc. Everything that affects an individual separately. So say, for example, you have a scientist. A scientist will view it through the spectrum of a scientist. They will say, well, I've measured the room and it's not exactly perfect, and the table is not exactly centered, and the door is not perfect. I don't see how the table could have fit through the door. And technically it's not paint, it's stain. And okay, we'll leave it at that. So that's the scientist's perspective of the room. Oh, and he'll say also, technically the room is not empty because it's full of atoms and ether. Okay, and oxygen and, you know, all sorts of other gases, etc. So then you would say, okay, let's get an artist's perspective. An artist's perspective would say, well, it's not actually paint, it's stain, and it's not technically not black, it's charcoal. And the wood isn't wood, it's particle board with veneer, which is actually, you know, a combination of blah, 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 blah. Who really cares? And there's also screws holding the wood together, so it's not technically just wood, there's actually metal in there. And it isn't technically centered in the room, it's slightly off center. And the craftsmanship of the table is fairly basic. Okay, so there's two completely different perspectives. However, the fundamentals of truth underlying those two perspectives still remains the same. There is a black table, painted black table, made of wood, in the center of the room, and the room has a door. So you can't deny that the fundamentals are the same, and you could go through all the other 18 people and they would all have equally different perspectives, but the fundamental of what is remains the same. Now, you could have also a hypothesis. So somebody could ask you, how did the table get into the room? Well, you could have multiple hypotheses about how the table got into the room, and you could say, well, the table was always there and the room was always there. It doesn't matter because it's always been there and it always will be there. Okay, so then you could have, well, aliens put it there. All right, you could say, well, they made the table outside of the room and brought the table in through the door, and they measured the dimensions of the room and the dimensions of the table and placed the table squarely in the middle of the room. Okay, you could say they built the table inside the room, or you could say they built the room around the table. At this point, being that they are all theories, they're all equally valid at the theoretical point of view. However, if you're going to be scientific about something, then you have to test the hypothesis. And first test is logic. So you can get rid of a lot of these hypotheses with logic. Now, if you're somebody who believes in aliens and you think that aliens brought the table into the room, you're probably not going to dismiss the hypothesis that aliens put it in the room. But really, logically speaking, do you think an alien is going to bother putting a table in a room? Probably not. But let's just say that you do, and so you don't dismiss that as a possibility. But generally speaking, you can dismiss some of these as possibilities. The table has always been there and always will be there is not a possibility. Let's scratch that. That the table was built, that the room was built around the table. Well, if there's a floor on the table and the table's on the floor, then the room wasn't built around the table, so scratch that. So you have to apply logic to these hypotheses. You can't just randomly pick things out of thin air because you like the idea of aliens and you think that aliens put it there because I like aliens and I want to support my belief in aliens. And so that's what we have going on here, is a lot of ridiculous assumptions that have no basis in reality, and they are not tested with logic first. They don't get past the theory stage. They don't get past the hypothesis stage. So the next stage is that you test these hypotheses with science, with experimentation. So you will take this table, you will look at the table, you will study the dimensions of the table. Will it fit through the door? Okay, well, it's possible that the table fit through the door if they jigged it a little bit, you know, put the legs in first, turned it on its side, and got it in through the door that way. Okay, so that's a possibility. So it's possible that they built the table outside of the room, jigged it a little, got it in the door, measured the room, and put the table on the floor squarely centered, even though it's not quite centered because the dimensions of the table and the room don't quite fit. All right, fine. So then you have that is still a possibility. So what about the possibility that they built it in the room? Well, you could assemble it in the room, but the room isn't big enough. You measure the room and you say, well, the room isn't big enough to actually build the table in the room. So, and there's no room here for the machinery to build the table in the room, but it could have been assembled here. Okay, so scratch that as a hypothesis. It could have been broken apart and reassembled in the room, but it couldn't have been built in the room. So these are the things that you need to test, and then you need to test them again and again and again. They need to be tested multiple times to prove that this is something that is a consistency, that it's a repeatable experiment that has the same results. If you can get the table in the room one time, but you can't get it in any other time, you still got it in the room. So you have to figure out, well, how did we get it in the room the first time? And you have to do it the same way every time, and then that's repeatable. You should be able to get it in the room every time if you do it the same way. But if you try to get it in the room a different way every time, then you're not going to have repeated results. So, I mean, this is logical stuff. And this is the problem with what's going on here, is that people are not using logic. They're getting caught up in the theory, and this is where we ended up on a spinning ball in the first place, because people get caught up in theory, and then they build on those stupid, ridiculous theories, and everything's founded on nothing. It's all fantasy. So, yeah, okay, I get frustrated because people are not using logic, and logic is something that everybody should have access to. It just requires that you think things through, rather than just accepting that, oh, I like aliens, I like the idea that aliens put it there. Let's say that aliens put it there. Okay, that sounds good. Same thing goes for Jesus. If you say, okay, this table, say a priest comes by and says, tells you this table was built by, I'm running low on battery. Let's say that this table was built by priests from the cross that Jesus hung on. Oh my goodness. If somebody tells you that, the religious Jesus people are not going to want to let it go. They're going to want to believe it, whether there's any actual proof in that or not. Sorry, I'm trying to plug in my camera. So let's turn this off. Turn that off too. Okay, so you got people wanting to believe things just because it backs up their belief system. And that is not rooted in fact or scientific experiments or reality or anything. It's just rooted in their beliefs, and this is where you get into problems. So how does this tie back into duality and delusion? So basically, now this idea of duality, that things are black and white, it either is or it isn't. I've been thinking about this for quite some time, and this notion that if you look at something as simple and straightforward, or seemingly straightforward, as good and evil, there's varying shades of good and evil. There's a whole spectrum of good and evil. You can say, well, I like ice cream. I like to eat ice cream. Ice cream is good. Is it good for you, though? It's not good for you. It's full of sugar, which is poison. It harms your body. It's full of dairy, which is full of hormones, which is full of fat, which is also not good for your body. There's so many things in ice cream that is not good for you. So is it then evil? You can say that it's evil. You could say that the people pushing ice cream on you are evil for pushing ice cream on you, because it's a poison. It's going to harm you. It's going to give you diabetes if you live off of ice cream. So you can say that it's evil, but again, it's a spectrum. To somebody who's starving and has nothing to eat, then ice cream is a good thing, because they need to eat something. And if that's the only thing that's available, it's going to nourish them. It's going to bring them back to life. If you look at something like murder, and you say, okay, well, killing someone is evil, black and white, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Well, what if that same person is attacking you in your home and is going to kill you? Is then killing that person because you have no choice other than to kill that person, or they're going to kill you? Is that then evil? No. You're trying to save yourself. So this idea that you can't have one without the other, that you can't be happy without the suffering, You can be happy without the suffering. You don't need the suffering to tell you that you're happy. I don't agree with this. I don't agree that I need to feel extreme pain in order to feel extreme joy. I don't agree that we only experience great love by experiencing great suffering. I know plenty of people who experience great love without experiencing great suffering. It doesn't add up. And I'm going to think more on this later on, but for now, I don't agree with this. And this black and white thinking is very narcissistic. It is incredibly narcissistic. It is part of this narcissistic mind that runs this place. Because if you are either all good or all bad. And again, if you haven't looked into narcissistic mind, please do, because it's incredibly important in understanding how this world works. So narcissists, you are at the very beginning of a relationship, you are all good, you are wonderful, you are their next target, you are everything they've ever wanted because you have all the traits they don't have and they want to take them from you. They idolize you, they put you on a pedestal, they love bomb you, they see you as all good, but the moment you do something bad, you're all bad. They have absolutely zero context, zero object constancy. They cannot say that you can be both good and bad. They cannot say that you can have both good qualities and bad qualities. It's either one or the other. And this is black and white thinking. This is what I think is what is going on here with this whole idea of this dualistic thinking and the twin pillars and the collapsing of the pillars. And I want to get into that later, but I think that it's all misunderstood and misinterpreted. Now, here's the other thing. This idea that you can simultaneously hold different perspectives of reality and they both exist is false. You cannot say that that's a tree and that is also a flower. It is either a tree or a flower. And to say that both perspectives are right is wrong. It isn't. It's a tree or it's a flower. There are cases where something can be two things at once. Of course. I mean, you can have a vase that's also a clock, right? So, I mean, let's not get into absurdities here, but my point is that you can, and everyone is entitled to, believe whatever you want. You can believe whatever you want about anything or anybody, or have any concept of the world that you choose. But it doesn't mean that it's real. It doesn't mean that there's any basis in reality. And it doesn't mean that it's going to manifest here. It's only going to manifest in your imagination. And the more that you focus on manifesting this belief that what you think is real, even though it is not, the further into delusional thinking you're going to get. The further into creating this world that doesn't exist and it only exists in your mind. And this is dangerous thinking. And they're planting this idea in our heads, especially in New Age, law of attraction talks, in simulation theory talks, in Mandela effect talks, this idea that the world can be whatever you want it to be. You can be whatever you want to be. That if you think of something long and hard enough and you focus on it, it will manifest. I'm sorry, but no, that's not how it works. You can think, going back to the Aron Goch example, you can think that you live in a dangerous world, and for a long time, your focus could be on how dangerous things can be, and eventually you're probably going to attract something dangerous in your direct experience. Somebody might break into your home, somebody might attack you, somebody might mug you, somebody might shoot you. Somebody might kill somebody that you know. You're eventually going to attract something dangerous because that is your focused attention. That is what you are experiencing, and that is what you will continue to experience. But if you acknowledge that there's a dangerous reality in your experience and you want to avoid it, then your focus must be on your safety. So you take precautions, you live in a safe neighborhood, you drive down safer streets, you make sure your doors are locked, you drive quickly through dangerous neighborhoods, you pay attention when you're walking, and you carry a gun, or you have a gun in your house, or you have all sorts of things you can do to take precautions to live safely. Your focus is on your safety. Your focus is not on how dangerous it is. So there's a difference. There's a distinct difference, but both are grounded in reality. This idea that, oh, it's not dangerous here, all I have to do is have positive thinking, and you don't take any precautions, and you just go around thinking, well, nobody's going to harm me, I'm perfectly safe, and you just live in this sort of bubble. Well, that might last for a little while, but then you might also get mugged, and you might say, well, I'm still safe, I didn't get hurt, they took all my money, but it's still safe, I'm still okay. And that's fine. You can still think that way. You can still continue about your business thinking that everything's fine, but then it might get worse. You might get shot, and you say, well, I didn't die. Yeah, you can still continue to think that way, but you've been mugged and shot now. Are you still going to be thinking that it's not safe, or that it is safe? It's like you've got to have some sort of basis in reality here. And so this idea that you can think that, say for example, there are aliens, just for argument's sake, whether there are aliens or not, you believe that there are aliens and that aliens abducted you and that they left a table in the middle of a room, and yet nobody else believes this. There's absolute evidence to the contrary, like a multitude of evidence to the contrary, and yet you continue to believe that there are aliens and that they left this table in the room, and you are basically living in this world of delusion because there is zero evidence for any aliens, zero evidence that aliens left the table in the room, and yet you will continue to believe that there are aliens because you like the idea that there are aliens, but they don't exist. They never will exist. The only place they exist is in your imagination. Therefore, that's delusional thinking. How can it be anything else? You will not manifest an alien by thinking about it. You're not going to. It doesn't work that way. So you can't. And also, this idea that you can't say that, well, I can believe that aliens exist and you can believe that they don't, and both are true. No, it's just true in your head. So, this is a very complicated subject, because now we're getting back to the very beginning of the conversation where this woman was saying to Aron that it's all in his head. But it isn't in his head. There's a reality that's going on around him. In the case of the aliens, there is zero reality going on around you to prove that there are aliens. So why are you continuing to cling to the idea that there are aliens if there's zero proof that there are aliens? Well, I had a personal experience with an alien. Okay, so explain your personal experience with the alien. Well, that can be explained through an out-of-body experience, or that can be explained through a dream, a lucid dream. And it is actual fact that it is not an alien encounter, it is a dream. You can deny it all you want, but the truth is that it was not an alien encounter, it was a dream. And I'm not saying that this is an example, it's an illustration. So whether or not people actually do have alien encounters is irrelevant. This is just an example for this particular story. So if this person holds true, no, I had an alien encounter, this is what I believe. But when you have new information, when you're presented with new information that aliens do not exist, you did not have an alien encounter, it was a lucid dream or it was an out-of-body experience or what have you, and there's actual concrete proof, and you continue to believe in the alien story, you are delusional. You are thinking something that isn't true. And you're founding all of your experiences, and everything that you filter comes through, everything that you perceive comes through that filter. And this is delusional thinking, and you're getting into dangerous territory, and you're founding all of your beliefs, because it's all beliefs at that point, because you're not looking at facts, because you've been shown the facts and you've denied it. And so you are now in the territory of delusion. So the reason I bring this up is because there is only what is in our perception of it. And when someone presents you with facts and you ignore them in favor of your perception, that's when you go into delusion. And it's fine if you can't see it for a while. Like I said in a previous video, you can't see things because of your filter, because of your preferences, your beliefs. This is where you're holding on to your delusions. You're holding on to your fantasies. You're holding on to your lies. And you deny the truth. My sister and I had a conversation where I got upset because I had a thought about an experience I had, and I believed it meant, so for example, my sister told me something and I believed that it meant something else. I believed that it meant that she didn't want to talk to me. And so I got upset I didn't get upset with her, I got upset that I had spoken to her, and I said, I really now wish I hadn't spoken to you. And she's like, well, why is that? So I told her, I said, well, I got the sense that you don't want to talk to me. And she's like, well, that's not true. I'm willing to talk to you as much as you want to talk. So what you believe is not true. I said, well, it's true for me. She's like, no, it's not true, therefore it's not true at all. It's like, well, it's my perception, so it's true for me. Okay, yes and no. It is my perception. It is true for me. It is something that I based my reaction on. I believed that her saying such and such interpreted as she didn't want to talk to me. But objectively, the objective truth was that's not what it meant at all. Therefore, my perception is inaccurate. My perception is not true. Objectively. Subjectively, it is. So there is what is, which is the objective truth, and our perception of it, the subjective truth. So subjective truth is our personal experience of what is. It doesn't mean you have to negate it or deny it or anything. You just totally have to accept it. However, you have to accept that it's subjective and is not objective. So the objective truth is all there is. Our interpretation of what it means to us personally, of our personal experience of it, is personal to us and also should not be negated. However, you have to be careful that you're not hinging everything on your personal subjective truth, your personal subjective experience, and making that objective. It's not objective. I hope this was clear. It's just a very big topic, and I don't mean any offense to anybody who is listening to this who may or may not agree, whatever. If you're not there yet, you're not there yet, and I don't mean like offense to you, but you listen, like, we have to use common sense, logic, reasoning, rational thinking, base it in reality, because otherwise you're gonna blow off into fantasy land, And that's exactly what they did with the spinning ball Earth. They took us off into fantasy land, sci-fi land. So anyway, I'm gonna leave it here. I'll talk about more on this later. Okay. Hope you guys are doing well, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.